Thank you, Alanis, for the kind introduction, for the kind words. So I think we can get started. So we're going to be talking about an important disease today. We're going to be talking about cancer, something that affects all of us, right? When we think about cancer, it's something that might affect us in our lifetimes. It affects families, friends, it affects societies. It is striking to think that more than 1 in 5 people will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. It is also shocking to think that it is the second leading cause of death worldwide. And when we look at some statistics to see the impact, the global burden of cancer, the numbers are really striking. So these are some statistics from the year 2022. When we look at the statistics, globally, in that year, 20 million people were diagnosed with cancer. And in the same year, 10 million people died because of cancer. So this is striking numbers. What is even very, very worrying is that we are experiencing an increase in incidence globally. So when somebody looks at the figures, I said a while ago that in the year 2022, we had 20 million people being diagnosed with cancer, and this number is expected to increase to 32.6 million people. When we look at mortality, the 10 million people that died, that number that we mentioned a while ago for 2022 is expected to increase to 16.9 million. So we're talking about something which is very challenging, and we're talking about facing an increase in incidence. When somebody looks at Europe, again, Europe is facing a big problem as well. So in the same year, 4.5 million people were diagnosed with the disease, and approximately 2 million people died because of this disease. And even though Europe has 9% of the population, it is, the impact is 20%. It's experiencing a 25% global impact. Again, this is a striking number when somebody thinks about it. This is particularly the reason that the European Union has developed a specific mission on cancer. And this mission is looking at reducing the burden that cancer has on individuals and societies by promoting prevention, by promoting and improving diagnosis, enhancing access to high-quality treatment, and all of this is being conducted through specific policies, but also through dedicated research programs. There's a specific goal for this mission to improve the lives of approximately 3 million people by the year 2030. When we're talking about cancer, we're talking about at least 200 different forms. So it's not one disease, as we all know, but we're talking about 200 different forms. And within those forms, there are certain subcategories. So it's a heterogeneous disease. You know, we use the label cancer, but it's a very heterogeneous disease. It affects different parts of the body. And if we look at total global cases in terms of the population, the cancers with the highest incidence are in the specific order lung, followed by breast, colorectal, and prostate cancer. There is a particular concern with colorectal cancer. It's the most alerting increase that has been reported. And evidence from the literature supports an association, of course, it's something that is currently being studied, but an association with obesity, type 2 diabetes, physical inactivity, but also antibiotic use. And somebody might wonder why antibiotic use. Okay, there's a specific reason for that that we will discuss in a bit. These are some statistics for Cyprus. So for the year 2022, we have around 6,000 cases, new cases of cancer. And at this stage, I wanted to discuss very briefly a research project that we developed here at the medical school. It's called StudyCan. It is basically a population-based study of patients diagnosed with breast cancer, breast, cervical, colorectal, lung, prostate, and thyroid cancer. And this is using statistics from 2004 data, from 2004 until 2017. So in the study project, we wanted to assess the distribution of stage of cancer diagnosis, but also the other aim was to compare trends in cancer incidence, mortality, and 5-year survival rates across the time span that we have looked within the Cypriot population, but across different countries as well. We are in the process of the people from the UNIC team, of course, leading the project is Christiana Dimitriou and Annalisa Patrocki, and I'm involved in this project as well. And this is in collaboration with the Bank of Cyprus Oncology Center, the Cyprus Cancer Registry and Health Monitoring Unit of the Ministry of Health and the Cyprus University of Technology, and we're in the process of almost finalizing the manuscript and submitting. There are many results from this paper, of course, but I wanted to highlight something which is significant to our discussion today, which is that we are experiencing in Cyprus, similar to other countries, increases in incidence. So we have an increase in incidence of breast and lung cancer. So breast is increasing on average 1.1% per year, and lung cancer by 2.6% per year. So this is, again, worrying, and this is something that should alert us at the local stage as well to see what we can do to tackle this incidence. Can we reduce it, and what can be done? What is the good news is that at least we live in a country that the healthcare system provides access to good care. So at least for breast and prostate cancer, the survival rates are quite high, around 90%, 83% for colorectal cancer, and 64% for lung. Now, in order to tackle any problem, as we all know, we have to understand it, right? So in the previous slides, I tried to kind of emphasize the big challenge that we're facing. So I think everybody can agree that we are dealing with this challenge which affects us all. But what is cancer? In order to find it, we need to understand. We have to have a common knowledge of what it's all about. So cancer is nothing else but the abnormal growth and proliferation of cells, which may sometimes metastasize. They may get transported to other sides of the body where they form secondary tumors. So, and why does this take place? In our organisms, which normally work quite well, everything has to be kept in balance. Right? So we have cell division. Why? Because we always need to generate cells, right? The cells that in our body are like the workers which are executing all the different activities in the organism. So we have to produce new cells. We have to create new cells to produce the different activities. At the same time, or cells which have suffered damage need to die. So if you do have damage within a cell, right, it's not beneficial that damaged cell, which is ineffective, continues to proliferate. So you need to have a way where you get rid of those damaged cells, and that is being done by a process known as apoptosis, which is basically cell suicide, right? So you need to have this balance maintained. So you produce enough cells to conduct, the activities that you want, and you heal the cells which are damaged, and everything has to be balanced. Anything that disrupts, and this is called, we call it homeostasis because it's this balance. Anything that disrupts this balance, whether when you start increasing cell division or when you stop cell death, these two events are leading to tumorigenesis. Okay, so you have, this is a simplistic kind of cartoon which describes, yes, you do have a parent cell, and in the organism you're producing two daughter cells. Of course, this is an oversimplification of very complicated mechanisms and which are involved in cell division. And this is called the cell cycle, the process through which one cell divides into two cells. And there are very complicated mechanisms and lots of genes and proteins which are involved with producing proteins to control exactly whether the conditions are right for the cells to take place, to divide or not. So what is responsible for this cell division are two types of genes. So we have what are known as, and cancer is a result of faults or mistakes happening in these genes. So these genes are the oncogenes and the tumor suppressor genes. We all have what are known as proto-oncogenes, right? So we all have genes which are needed to lead to cell division, right? Otherwise, if we didn't have those genes, we wouldn't have the proteins that are sending signals to the cell to divide. But the problem is when a mutation takes place, damage in the DNA of those genes, that leads to these genes being defective, right? If they are defective, these genes are sending signals, divide, right? They're telling the cell, keep dividing, and this is what forms a tumor, right? And we have ample examples of different oncogenes like the HER2, the BCR-ABL, the CMYC, so they're working either on the membrane of the cell or as transcription factors within the cell. So this is one defect that happens. But the other defect that happens is mutations in the tumor suppressor genes. So everything in biology works in a balance, right? If you have a way to activate a pathway, you should have a way to block that pathway. So what these tumor suppressor genes are doing is normally they repair the DNA damage that we suffer from different factors. They inhibit cell proliferation or they induce apoptosis. But what happens if you damage those tumor suppressor genes, the genes? If you damage those genes, then the tumor suppressor genes are not working as they should. They're producing proteins which cannot do their work in the cell, and therefore the net result leads to, again, uncontrolled cell division, which leads to a cancer. So somebody might wonder, why do we have this damage? Where is it coming from, right? So, when you talk to a lot of people, and older people, they say, why do we get cancer, first of all, we said what is being affected, but what is causing it, of course, can be either a genetic predisposition or the environment. A lot of people don't know that we might have inherited certain genes that have a genetic predisposition that might trigger, right, tumorigenesis. But I'm sure all of you know, for example, about BRCA genes and how women who have inherited BRCA mutated genes have a high predisposition to develop breast cancer, right? Or we have a genetic predisposition known as LFS, in which case these people inherit a mutated gene in a p53 tumor suppressor, which is a very important gene that leads to tumorigenesis. But most people, of course, are aware also about chemical, physical, right? When we talk about carcinogens, and a lot of times we talk about carcinogens being found in food, right? Or everybody knows about UV radiation and how we have to be careful, especially, for example, in the summer, but also other conditions. So those are all basically substances or exposures that lead to cancer or certain viruses. We know the link, for example, between hepatitis B and liver cancer, and we know about human papillomavirus and cervical cancer, right? So all these, the net effect is that all of these carcinogens are coming from the environment, but there's also an element of genetic disposition. But the net effect is that these two genes that we've described, the oncogenes and the tumor suppressor genes, are defective. They're sending signals for the cells to divide, and this leads to uncontrolled cell proliferation and cancer. Okay, so this is kind of a summary slide that puts everything together. So we do have oncogenes. We need to have them. If we didn't have them, our cells wouldn't divide, right? Imagine, for example, if you were not able to divide and you have a scratch, right? You would die because you wouldn't be able to produce cells that will fix your wound, right? So we need to have them telling the cell to divide. But if there is so it's an on-off switch, it's a balance. But if something happens and these oncogenes get mutated, then you have oncogenes being formed, which are sending signals to the cell to keep dividing until a lump is formed, right? A tumor is formed. On the other hand, we have a mechanism to stop this proliferation from tumor suppressor genes. But if these tumor suppressor genes become defective, then they cannot work in the cell and they cannot stop this uncontrolled cell proliferation. Now, when you're forming a tumor somewhere in the body, some of those cells from the tumor will be removed, and they will go through the circulatory system and the lymphatic system to other sites in the organism, and that's where metastasis takes place, right? When you have the formation of secondary tumors. So, if you are a government, if you are WHO, right, if you are responsible to sort of tackle this challenge, you have two main aims, wouldn't you? You would have the aim to reduce the incidence, right? And you would have the aim to reduce mortality. mortality, right? So how do you do it? There are two ways, there are more ways to do it, but generally we are trying to improve management, right? So we are trying to develop drugs which are more effective to give to people, right? So that they can survive the disease. But we're also trying to tackle prevention. So it could be secondary prevention, where you're trying to kind of detect the disease at its early stages, but there's also a lot that can be done at the primary prevention. Hopefully, all of these policies and the development of all these programs and the development of new drugs and so on should try and be aiming to reduce the incidence of cancer, but also the mortality. Now, we have made a lot of progress in producing new drugs, right? And you hear, when you read different articles, there's always new drugs coming out, right? And things seem positive, which is great. And there has been a huge development in producing new drugs. This is not to kind of scare anybody, but this is just to give you an overview of the complexity within the cell. I oversimplified in the previous slides, talking about two groups of genes, right? Tumor suppressor genes and oncogenes. But when somebody has said, look, if you're a molecular biologist and you're trying to understand how everything works, this is a snapshot of the reality of things, right? So different genes working together, different proteins at different levels, at the level of the membrane of the cell, in the nucleus. Things are very, very complicated, and this is why it's a difficult disease to tackle. Another thing that I wanted to kind of, I showed the slide to the students, and I think it's a very nice slide from a science teacher that is showing again the complexity of cancer, I believe in a simplified way. So let's assume you're a patient and you have a primary tumor in your pancreas, right? You see those different colors. It all starts from one cell, right? It all starts from one cell starting to divide. As the cell divides, it's because it has damaged DNA, right? Damaged DNA enzymes. It suffers more and more mutations, more mistakes in the genome, right? So as it does that, it forms different clones, right? So different, not everything, not every cell in the original lump is the same. If you were to clean, right, the genomics, if you do the genomics of different cells from different sizes of the tumor, you will find different mutations, even from one lump, right? Now, imagine the situation where that lump that you can see being here in the pancreas, right? So you can see different colors indicate different mutations and different identities really of the tumor. So if you have now a patient who suffers metastasis on the liver, right? Some cells go on the left-hand side and the others on the right-hand side, and they're forming different tumors, right? The different colors are indicating different tumors. Those start dividing, right? But then the different colors here indicate that that clone, that lump, suffers more and more mutations. So you have a very heterogeneous lump there, right? And imagine, so even if it's one patient from two masses, right, in the liver, those masses are having different mutations. If now you compare two patients, and these patients are, liver patients with liver cancer, again, if you do a genomic analysis to see the mutations, you would see that they have common mutations, but they also have different mutations, and different parts of their genome is quite different. Okay. Why am I making all this information? And probably a lot of you are saying, when is she going to get to the lifestyle? Okay, but there is a reason for that. And the reason for that is that, again, there's a lot of progress that has been made in terms of drug development. If you look, this is from a Nature Medicine paper that shows drug development from 2019 to 2021, okay? And it's just showing how many drugs have been developed, which are very specific, right? These are drugs which are targeting very specific mutations. PARP inhibitors, kinase inhibitors. If you were to, I know it might not look very clear, but if somebody looks very carefully, you can see that they're targeting specific mutations. Now this is a great thing, right? We didn't used to have this. We used to have generic chemotherapy, killing the cells, killing healthy cells as well. This is great because once you know what a patient is suffering from, then you should be able to design a cocktail of drugs to give to the patient, and it should be more specific, and it should work better for the patient, right? So there's a lot of progress that has been made, and people are talking a lot about precision oncology, right? Because in precision oncology, the effort is to be able to define, to know for every patient what mutations they have, screen their tumors, know exactly what mutations you have, and design a protocol to offer them very specialized treatment. And this is the way forward, okay? This is what's going to be happening. However, it does have its challenges. You might target those genes and you might be very specific, but it's very complicated to be able to interpret what kind of combinations you should use, right? Multi-professional healthcare teams, understanding how these drugs can work together, right, and their effects. This is where artificial intelligence, of course, is going to help a lot, it's believed, in the next few years, because you can have the right combination of drugs. Another issue, of course, is that, yes, you're developing drugs, but the delivery of drugs to patients in different healthcare systems, different societies, is not as accessible, right? So it depends where you live in the world, it depends on the cost of these drugs and how you can distribute them. It depends on whether multi-professional teams are there to kind of understand how they should distribute them and what combination. This is a very nice paper that is describing exactly the challenges involved. And this is where lifestyle factors come in place. So, as always, when we teach the students, we say that prevention is better than management, right? So I wanted to give you a little bit about the challenge, which we try to do, but the impact of the problem. I wanted to describe a little bit about, yes, progress in management. You do hear a lot about those things, but what are the complexities? How can we fight this problem? There are many issues involved with management. That part, of course, is we're going to continue to improve drugs, but at the same time, is there something else we can do, right, to tackle the problem? And again, this is where lifestyle factors come in place, and the idea of how these lifestyle factors can be used in the prevention to prevent cancer from developing, but also in survivorship. I don't think a lot of people, if you were to ask the general public, do you know the percentage of cancers that could be prevented by just changing your physical activity or your diet? Most people will not be aware of this striking number, but it is estimated that 30 to 50% of all cancers could be prevented by a lifestyle, okay? And this is the reason why the World Cancer Research Foundation and the American Institute for Cancer Research have developed specific recommendations to not only for the general public to help them prevent the development of cancer, but also for cancer patients and cancer survivors. There are 9 specific recommendations, but if somebody kind of tries to group them together, then you can see that basically these recommendations are focusing on healthy nutrition, physical activity, weight management, and limitation of alcohol consumption. This is not just theory. Lots and lots of evidence from the literature is supporting how these recommendations are actually working, okay, and that they're reducing the risk of developing cancer, but also they are improving survivorship and decreasing mortality. In the past few years, we have seen also the development of a branch of medicine, which is known as lifestyle medicine. Lifestyle medicine is basically working on how we can use evidence-based lifestyle interventions and other health-promoting behaviors to either prevent or treat and manage diseases, chronic diseases. There's 6 pillars on lifestyle medicine. So lifestyle medicine is focusing on how we can use whole food and plant-based nutrition, healthy nutrition, which is based on plants, how you can use the role of physical activity to reduce, again, chronic disease, but also it focuses on the avoidance of risky substances, stress management, restorative sleep, and positive social connections. This is a table that we are going to be discussing a little bit about our HEROES project. So this is an exercise we did in this project where we tried to map the recommendations from the WCRF to the pillars of lifestyle medicine, because the two have lots and lots of overlaps, right? So we wanted to see, to design a research project, how this, when we map these pillars, what kind of pillars are we looking at, okay? So if we match the recommendations, to the mapping of the recommendations in lifestyle medicine, we see the 5 healthy lifestyle components that you can see on the right-hand side. So healthy eating, regular physical activity, weight management, avoidance of risky substances, stress management, restorative sleep, and social connections. So what I would like to give you is a little bit for every healthy lifestyle component, what evidence we have. It's a lot of components, so it's just a brief overview. Most of the evidence is coming from nutrition, right? Healthy nutrition in the literature, because more studies have been done on the role of nutrition. So the recommendation from both the WCRF and lifestyle medicine is that we should be consuming as much as possible plant-based foods, okay? We should enrich our nutrition with plant-based foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And there is evidence from cohort studies, systematic reviews, and meta-analysis that are providing evidence that indeed, when you consume healthy diets, you reduce the risk of different cancers, including colorectal cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer, among others. There's also evidence specifically for the role of the Mediterranean diet. Now, we live in a country where we used to practice and have Mediterranean diet as part of our lives. In most countries, this has, we've deviated from that traditional good Mediterranean diet. But the evidence is showing that actually high adherence to the Mediterranean diet is reducing the risk of cancer mortality. There is also evidence that it is particularly the fruits and vegetables and the whole grains, the plant-based components of the diet, that are basically reducing the risk. There's also a lot of evidence about the role of dietary fiber. Okay, so if somebody looks at the evidence, this paper, for example, has provided evidence that dietary fiber consumption reduces the risk of all-cause and breast cancer-specific mortality by 37 to 28%. That's striking, just that evidence on the role of fiber. And somebody can, a lot of experiments have been done, and they're done in vitro animals, certain other trials that have shown how is this done. Well, healthy eating does have a role to encourage DNA repair, to reduce DNA damage, and to prevent inflammation. There's strong evidence between the association of inflammation in our body and cancer development, right? So all of these, the good nutrients in the healthy diet are involved in molecular pathways that reduce the risk of cancer development. On the other hand, if you have an unhealthy diet rich in processed food and high in meat and so on, then you're likely to increase the inflammation on your body. You're using all those carcinogens and all those things that are present in the unhealthy food and the processed food. They do encourage DNA damage, right? So by having high DNA damage, or if you inhibit your DNA repair, you develop cancer. There is a strong association for all those red meat lovers there, that there's a strong association between red meat consumption and colorectal cancer, right? Of course, it affects other types of cancers, but also specifically colorectal cancer. And a lot of evidence in the past few years are showing a very specific role of our gut microbiota, right? So our gut is doing more things than we thought it used to do. Our microbiota, and this is the reason why I said there might be a role for antibiotic use, right? So if you use excessively, I said a while ago, if you excessively use antibiotics and you're killing your microflora, right, your microbiota, and if you don't have good bacteria there, then you're likely to increase the risk of cancer, okay? And this could be a reason why we see this increase in colorectal cancer, because we know that in certain countries, including our countries, in our country, there's sometimes excessive use of antibiotics in every years, right? So the gut microbiota is doing a lot of interesting things. So depending on the constitution of the gut microbiota, you might either increase your risk of developing cancer or decrease your risk of developing cancer. So it all there is evidence, a lot of studies that have been done that have shown a role of the gut microbiota in increasing or decreasing inflammation in the body, in modulating, affecting the immune system, affecting the metabolite production. So it all depends on what you eat, right? So if you're eating and consuming a very good diet, then you're decreasing the levels of pro-carcinogenic bacteria, right? And we have specific examples of and associations these days for specific pro-carcinogenic bacteria, and you're increasing the levels of anti-carcinogenic bacteria. And it all depends not only on the levels, but also the activity and the metabolites that they produce, okay? So, but there's evidence exactly what they're doing at the molecular level. On the other hand, if you're consuming a diet which is not healthy, then your microbiota constitution changes, and that might increase your risk on developing certain cancers. There is a lot of evidence, again, not only colorectal cancer, but even for other cancers. We have a paper that describes how the specific constitution of the microbiota affects breast cancer, right? And a lot of our tissues do have, it's not, but bacteria are not just in the gut, right? But they're easily affected by the constitution of the gut. Okay, so that was the first component where there's a lot of evidence, and most of the evidence out there is related to nutrition. But of course, another component which is very important is regular exercise. The recommendations from WCRF and lifestyle medicine are supporting that we should try and engage in at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise. And there seems to be studies that have shown specific evidence of how regular exercise does reduce the risk of developing a variety of different cancers. There's evidence also that shows that the higher there's a direct association between the level of intensity of exercise and the risk. So it's not a yes or no situation, like whether you increase the risk or not, but it also gradually, the more you exercise, the more you reduce the risk. Okay? So this is strong evidence that it has emerged, and more studies that have emerged recently. So, and there is, we believe through different studies that again, physical activity does regulate the immune function. It regulates the hormone levels which are involved in tumorigenesis, and it prevents inflammation. Okay? And we do know again the role association between inflammation and cancer development. On the other hand, if you lead a sedentary lifestyle, then your inflammation increases, and you're likely to develop cancer. There's also evidence on the role between physical activity, not only to reduce the risk, right, but also it has very good health outcomes, and it improves the quality of life of cancer patients and survivors. So if you're a survivor and you are, for example, on aromatase inhibitors, medication for many years, right? Doing exercise reduces the side effects associated with the consumption of these drugs. In terms of the weight management, of course, the weight management is the third sort of component, and of course, it's directly related with the physical activity and the nutrition. But again, there is an association between obesity and the risks of reducing the risk of different cancers. Again, it is believed that it's mostly working through inflammation, but also DNA damage. We also know, of course, this is more common practice about how certain risky substances lead to cancer, and again, evidence of how tobacco, the recommendation today is to quit, of course, smoking and to moderate alcohol consumption. If you need to have some, and again, different cancers are associated with these substances. And it's not just the lung. People think, okay, that smoking is associated with the lung, but that's not the case. It's more cancers which are associated with that. Now, this is an interesting one. So it's about stress management, right? The other ones, I think most people, we talk about stress a lot, right? And we keep saying you shouldn't stress, you're going to get sick, you're going to develop. But, and there is an association between stress management and the higher the stress levels, the higher the risk of developing cancer. But the studies are not as concrete yet. Okay, why? Because it's very difficult to measure the stress level. So in the case, it's more difficult to design studies that will produce this evidence, but there is evidence supporting that, especially for breast cancer. And there seems to be also a role for personality traits there. So certain personality traits seem to be at higher risk. There is also a role for stressful life events, not just stress in general, but stressful life events increasing the risk of breast cancer in particular. So this is an interesting one, and more studies, of course, need to be done. I think this is kind of one of those areas that needs even more work. Sleep is another lifestyle component from lifestyle medicine, which is supporting how if you don't have a good pattern or a good duration of sleep, then you're likely to develop different kinds of diseases. But there's some emerging evidence for the role of sleep in developing cancer, and there seems but more work needs to be done. Again, it's not one of those areas that more studies need to be conducted. And there is definitely, however, a bidirectional relationship. So because we do know that people that get diagnosed with cancer are likely to be anxious, anxiety is likely to decrease their sleep level. So but at the same time, maybe the prevention of sleep is leading towards cancer. So this is an interesting future area of research to examine this association. And another one which is kind of more towards the social aspects, and it's coming again from lifestyle medicine. Lifestyle medicine is supporting the need to cultivate strong social bonds, prioritize social relationships, good relationships. And this has come up also from a lot of evidence in the blue zones that has shown that countries in which there's high longevity, and those countries, something that was found very common was that in these societies, they have very strong relationships with their community, with their family, with their friends. And it seems that there's an role for inflammation. Certain studies have provided evidence that the better relationships you have, the lower is the level of inflammation in your body, and that affects cancer. So, but more research, of course. This is a more difficult, probably, area to assess, but a very interesting area to do it. Okay, so all of the evidence that I've given you, it was research also. We had conducted this literature review to derive all the research to develop a project. We call this project HEROES, which stands for Healthy Lifestyle Practices of Breast Cancer Survivors in Cyprus. This is a project that received funding from the UNIC Medical School, and it had two broad aims. The first aim was to investigate the association between adherence to the WCRF and LM healthy lifestyles and the quality of life of breast cancer survivors in Cyprus. And the second aim was to conduct a scoping literature review to discover the various facilitators that either deter or facilitate breast cancer survivors in adopting healthy lifestyle habits. These are the members of the team, and it's great to have a lot of people here who are working on the project and have done amazing work. It was an amazing team. In addition to our faculty and our team from the medical school, of course, we conducted this research in association with, in collaboration with the Bank of Cyprus Oncology Center and the Cyprus University of Technology. We recruited the participants to this study from the Bank of Cyprus Oncology Center. We managed to recruit 272 breast cancer survivors, which was kind of a difficult task, but it was managed. And it was all women who had finished their basic therapy, and it was women that were hormone receptor positive. And what we wanted to do is, what we asked them to do was to basically complete validated questionnaires and look at those results in association, to complete validated questionnaires on their lifestyle habits and their quality of life. We also collected clinical data from the records of the patients, and we also did some anthropometric measurements. Okay, so Constantinos, who is here, is responsible for all the analysis of the results, which we're currently still working on to try and finalize and submit the paper for publication. But I'm just giving you here some kind of generic results that we have seen in this initial stage. So we have seen that the adherence going to the Mediterranean diet was moderate to fair. we have seen that the levels of physical activity were quite high, which was quite good for these patients. 15% were still smokers even after their diagnosis. They had minimal alcohol consumption, their sleep quality was very good, the levels of emotional support were high, but their stress management was average. Okay? They had they reported a moderately good quality of life, but what we had seen was particularly that their stress was the number one most important factor that negatively associated their quality of life. So it was not really, the practice to try to kind of lead a healthy lifestyle, but there were a lot of things for improvement. Because as we mentioned before, there is an association, the higher the adherence to the recommendations, the lower the risk and the better the quality of life. So there's a lot that can be done to improve their adherence to their lifestyle habits, and a lot to be done to reduce their stress. Now, the results of this study, of course, hopefully will lead to the development of an intervention to pilot test in these women, and then maybe at a bigger scale. Another part of this project was to look at, we said that we're looking at the barriers and facilitators for adopting healthy lifestyles in breast cancer survivors, and this is for collecting data from the whole literature. It wasn't something for Cyprus because, of course, there isn't enough information on Cyprus, and we wanted to see specifically for breast cancer survivors what are the barriers and facilitators. We have managed to publish the protocol, and we're now collecting and analyzing all the literature to hopefully lead to publication for scoping review. Finally, I wanted to discuss about a new project that we started a few months ago, and this is called Health Empowerment and Lifestyle Tips for Healthy Youth or Healthy Teens. This is a project that in which it was a proposal that came actually from the Anti-Cancer Society, and it is coordinated by a medical school. The idea, what they wanted to do, what the Anti-Cancer Society wanted to do, is basically to implement an intervention in teenagers in schools in Cyprus. An intervention that would improve, it will increase healthy teenagers to lead healthy lifestyles, okay, and understand and change their behavior towards smoking, alcohol, diet, exercise, and stress. So what we are doing at this kind of phase is that we are developing, working on 3 narrative literature reviews, and the results of those narrative literature reviews will be used to develop an intervention to modify behavior and attitudes of those teenagers with regards to smoking, alcohol, diet, exercise, and stress. And we have, this is our team here, so Alexia, Banayota from here, and other faculty members. We're working also with the School of Life and Health Sciences, the Bangor Cyprus Oncology Center, the Cyprus University of Technology, and the Cyprus Anti-Cancer Society. Okay, so some closing remarks. So hopefully we've tried today to see how our lifestyle has a profound effect on the development in our overall health, really, and in basically either increasing or decreasing our cancer risk. Hopefully, I try to convince you that by embracing healthy habits, we can reduce our risk, and this is some communication that we can transfer also to others and our family members, our societies, and so that we can work towards preventing cancer whatever we can, but also to improve survivorship for people that are suffering from this disease. So just wanted to finish really quickly by showing you just a very short clip on the EU mission.
More than ever, cancer is a major and growing societal challenge. Each year, 2.7 million people in the EU are diagnosed with cancer, while 1.3 million die from the disease. It is time to act. The EU is on a mission to enhance by 2030 the lives of over 3 million people by developing a digital platform on health data for a better understanding of cancer, generating new evidence to help implement effective cancer prevention programs, optimizing diagnostics and treatments through national comprehensive cancer infrastructures, and improving the quality of life of cancer patients and survivors by collecting and analysing data on their needs. The EU mission on cancer is committing €378 million over the first 3 years to tackle this challenge. By working together, we can significantly reduce the devastating impact that cancer has on both individuals and society, whether you are a national or local representative, a researcher, healthcare provider, an investor, a patient, or a caring citizen. Join us and contribute by proposing and implementing activities, projects, or initiatives with and for citizens, now and for future generations.
In case anybody wants to find out anything, any of the resources, I can send you the presentations, send you the papers that you like. And thank you very much for participating.